A successful realtor, world traveler, wife, and mom. Now, an accused murderer. For the last 14 years, she seems to have been living her best life. But according to police in Texas, she has been hiding a dark secret since 2012.
The screen opens with the host, Chris Stewart, standing in a dim studio, the Law and Crime logo glowing behind him. He speaks directly to the camera, voice low and urgent.
Police say they got a warrant for Velasquez's arrest in May, and they put her under arrest at a traffic stop last week. She is now charged with capital murder.
This is the moment the plastic fork sealed her fate. Myra Velasquez, Texas realtor, world traveler, mom, sits in a county jail cell tonight because 14 years after her close friend was stabbed over 100 times, she sat down for lunch, used a fork, and left it behind on a plate. She didn't know undercover officers were watching. She didn't know that fork would be lifted, tested, and matched to a single droplet of blood found at the crime scene in 2012. And in a Tarrant County courtroom this morning, that fork became the centerpiece of a bond hearing that laid bare the life she built on top of a brutal secret. This is Crime Fix. I'm Chris Stewart, cut to courtroom interior. The camera pans across a packed gallery. A woman in the front row clutches a framed photo of the victim, Iraima Chavez, 33-year-old with a warm smile.
Now, I want to walk you through how this cold case came to be and what they say Velasquez left behind that helped police crack this case. I want you to meet the victim in this story, Iraima Chavez. She was 33 years old when she was found stabbed to death inside her apartment in Arlington in January of 2012. Police say that she had been stabbed more than 100 times. One of the
bailiff calls the case State of Texas versus Myra Velasquez. Velasquez is led in, her orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the luxury vacations that once filled her Instagram. She looks pale, eyes red, but her posture is stiff, more indignant than broken. Judge Elena Rosales, who has handled capital murder arraignments for over a decade, wastes no time. This is a bond hearing in a capital murder case. The state has indicated it intends to present evidence of flight risk and the strength of its case. Ms. Velasquez, you are represented by Mr. Harlan Decker. Mr. Decker, is your client prepared to proceed? Decker, a silver-haired attorney with a calm, practiced drawl, rises. Yes, Your Honor. And I'll state at the outset that Ms. Velasquez voluntarily surrendered, has deep ties to the community, and is not a flight risk. The state's evidence is, well, let's see what they've got. Prosecutor Maria Castillo stands. She's sharp, and she knows this case is a career maker. Your Honor, the state will show that, in January 2012, the defendant stabbed Iraima Chavez over 100 times inside her own apartment. The scene was so violent that the Tarrant County medical examiner would later describe it as overkill, indicative of intimate rage. The killer left behind one thing, a single droplet of blood on a TV stand, blood that did not belong to the victim.
The strong lead that we had was a droplet of fresh blood that was recovered from a bedroom TV stand inside the apartment. The crime lab determined that the blood sample did not come from the victim, and it belonged to an unidentified Hispanic female.
That blood sat in evidence for over a decade, tested against every known database, yielding nothing. Until last year, when the FBI used genealogy to point to a distant relative of Myra Velasquez.
Our homicide detective got a call from the FBI letting them know that the IGG process had identified a potential suspect, 42-year-old Myra Velasquez. She was a close friend of the victim who lived just a few miles away from the crime scene.
From there, detectives followed her, recovered a discarded fork from a restaurant, and the DNA on that fork matched the blood droplet.
For Velasquez. According to court records, once police narrowed in on her as a potential suspect, they started surveying her. And without her knowing, according to WFAA television, they followed Velasquez to a restaurant where she had lunch with friends. Police say when lunch was over, she left, and then undercover officers moved in and collected 2 plastic forks that she used, and they submitted it for testing. They also tested a cup reportedly.
1 in 3.5 octillion. That's the probability it belongs to anyone else.
In May, they were able to obtain a sample of DNA from a discarded trash, and we sent it to our crime lab for further analysis. The lab determined that the DNA was a match to the droplet of blood recovered from the crime scene.
Pattern interrupt in the gallery. The victim's sister, who has been clutching the photo, lets out a muffled sob. Judge Rosales doesn't gavel. She just holds up a hand, and the room falls silent. The camera holds on Velasquez, whose jaw tightens but whose eyes avoid the family. Decker rises again, slower this time. Your Honor, the state's entire case is a droplet of blood and a fork. Ms. Velasquez and the victim were friends. Of course her DNA could be in that apartment. She'd been there before. And the fork, collected from a restaurant trash bin without a warrant. That's fruit of the poisonous tree, and we'll be filing a motion to suppress. Judge Rosales removes her glasses. Mr. Decker, you're arguing admissibility at a bond hearing. The question before me isn't whether a jury will see that fork. It's whether your client is a danger to the community and a flight risk. The state has a droplet of blood at a murder scene and a fork that matches it. That's enough for me to listen. Sit down. Quotable line. The question isn't whether a jury will see that fork. It's whether your client is a danger. The gallery murmurs. Decker sits, his expression tight. Prosecutor Castillo continues. Your Honor, the state offers surveillance footage from the night of the murder. January 6, 2012, at 10:43 p.m., a figure in dark sweats approaches the victim's apartment. The figure keeps their head down, obscuring their face, a sign of premeditation. There is no forced entry. The door opens. The victim knew her killer.
Conducted a very thorough investigation, pursued several leads, but they could not fully identify the suspect.
Now, as you saw in the surveillance video, there were no signs of forced entry into Chavez's apartment. Perhaps it was a sign that she knew her killer. But Chavez's murder went cold.
We will present testimony that the defendant and victim were close friends. Cell phone records show they communicated frequently.
She was a close friend of the victim who lived just a few miles away from the crime scene. With this new information in hand, our homicide unit began conducting follow-up investigation into Ms. Velasquez. In May, they were able to
And the defendant lived just a few miles away. The monitor flickers to life.
One of the major pieces of evidence is this video from the night of her murder. It's surveillance video that police say shows a shadowy figure in sweats going up the stairs to Chavez's apartment. You can see they keep their head down. It does appear that they try to open the door, but after that, they just wait. And after about a minute, the door opens and they go inside.
The grainy video shows the shadowy figure climbing stairs, pausing, then the door opening. The camera lingers on the timestamp. In the courtroom, Velasquez shifts in her seat. Her lawyer places a hand on her arm. Castillo freezes the video on the shadow. And there's more. The victim was stabbed over 100 times. Our medical examiner will testify that this level of overkill, wounds to the face, chest, back, defensive wounds on the arms, suggests a killer consumed by rage, someone the victim knew intimately, someone with a personal motive. The defendant at the time was 28 years old, a friend who had access. And after the murder, a TV was missing from the apartment, a staged robbery perhaps.
Inside. Family members went to check on Chavez the next morning and they found her dead.
The Tarrant County medical examiners later determined that she was stabbed more than 100 times. A TV was reported missing from the apartment. We believe that the killer took the TV. Detectives at the time conducted a very thorough investigation.
The defendant took the TV to make it look like a break-in, but she left behind the one thing that would ultimately convict her, her own blood. Escalating stakes. Castillo now picks up a sealed evidence bag containing a photograph of the fork. She holds it high, and on May 6 of this year, detectives watched the defendant enjoy lunch at a Mexican restaurant in Arlington. After she left, they recovered 2 plastic forks, a cup, and a plate. Lab analysis confirmed the DNA on one fork matched the crime scene blood. The defendant's DNA, not from a casual touch, but from what our expert will testify is consistent with blood transfer during a violent struggle. The killer cut herself. That's why her blood was there. Decker objects. Your Honor, this is all speculation. The DNA doesn't tell you how the blood got there. My client could have cut her hand on a broken glass weeks earlier. Judge Rosales leans forward. Mr. Decker, if your client cut her hand weeks earlier, she'd have a scar. Does she? Decker hesitates. We haven't examined that? Then perhaps you should, the judge says. Because the state's expert just testified in a pretrial motion that the droplet was fresh. No degradation consistent with weeks, old blood. Overruled. Continue. Another quotable line, then perhaps you should. The court reporter's fingers fly. The victim's sister rises, trembling. Your Honor, may I speak? We've waited 14 years. She was my sister. She was a mother. I need to know why.
Justice and answers for so long. Telling the family.
Tell the family.
Oh, telling the family, that's why. Being able to share that with the family is why we do this work. They were very grateful. It was emotional, but everybody who's involved in this, whether you're the detective, whether you're on the FBI's IGG team, whether you're a crime scene working behind the scenes, everybody who touches a case like this feels that elation when it's solved, feels the pain for the family, and the reason why we all give so much of ourselves is for that.
Joining us now to talk more about this, Professor of Applied Forensics at Jacksonville State University, longtime death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. Always great to have you here. And genetic genealogy, there's a lot of cases that we're seeing where this is used to crack something that seemed like it'd be unsolvable. And in this case, the FBI says in 2024, they started kind of building out this DNA profile. I know we've talked about this before. Like I very early in school learned that science was not my path. So for those of us like me watching, or, who might be watching now, like in layman's terms for us, how does this genetic genealogy work and how it kind of factored into this case out of Texas?
Well, it all, and by the way, thanks for having me back with you, Chris. It all springs from an industry that, has now popped up out there, and that's everybody wanting to find out what their ancestry is, right?